Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 153 with Drew Canole. Some of my favorite parts of this episode were when he shares how to move past and let go of trauma so that you can live your best life. I also loved when he shared the 3 things you need to do to transform your life. And I love when he shared with us his 3 biggest life lessons. But there is so much more wisdom and inspiration that you get in the full episode. So, to listen to the full podcast and get all the info in the show notes, head on over to melissaambrosini.com/153 right now. Welcome, Drew. I am so excited to have you on the show. I can't wait for our conversation. But before we dive in, can you please tell us what you had for breakfast this morning?
Oh, wow. What I had for breakfast was nothing. I haven't eaten all day. I'm doing intermittent fasting. So when you and I are done here, I'm going to indulge in a giant green smoothie and probably a huge chicken salad.
Oh, yum. And do you do that every day, the intermittent fasting?
I do it 3 to 4 days a week,
Awesome.
especially on busy days. So Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday are my busiest days of the week, where it's stacked interviews, where it's stacked video shooting and meetings with the team. So I like to keep my mind agile, and intermittent fasting really helps with that. Or mimic fasting helps too.
What's mimic fasting?
So mimic fasting is when it's a low protein diet, so less protein, erring more on the side of simple carbohydrates, simple sugars. And you only eat about 500 to 700 calories. But what it does is it tricks your body into believing that you're actually in a fasted state. So you get the same benefits of human growth hormone, IGF-1. You get the benefits of the brain, the cognitive enhancement, production of BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So there's all kinds of stuff that they're showing with mimic fasting as well, which helps for immune response, autophagy, getting rid of bad cells, cleaning up the old ones. And once you eat protein again, allows your body to recharge a lot of the cells that are deficient and malfunctioning. Because we have all those in our body, right? As humans.
Yeah. And so would you do that mimic fasting a few times a week as well?
I've done mimic fasting a few times a week, and I've also done it to where I'll mimic fast for 5 to 7 days. And that's been really, really cool. However, nothing beats a good old fashioned water fast for 7 days or even like a juice fast. I'm a big proponent of that. I haven't done the dry fast yet, but I'm preparing myself to do that.
What is a dry fast?
A dry fast, I don't recommend anybody doing it unless they know what they're doing or it's supervised by a doctor. But a dry fast is no water and it's nothing to eat for however long you want to go.
And you've done that?
3 to 5 days is recommended. I haven't, but I have some mentors that are into it and they've done it before. That's the only one I haven't done. I'll probably do in the next 6 months.
So, can you tell us, for anyone who is listening who hasn't heard of you or come across any of your amazing products and books, can you tell us your story and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. All right, cool. So my story started when I was born into this experience. And I believe we choose where we come in at. And for me, I chose to be in an abusive home. So I was tortured and neglected. And I'm not saying any of this stuff to derive any energy from empathy. I'm just saying it to show you kind of what's possible when you are in control of the story that we create as human beings. So I was born into an experience where it was tremendously traumatic. If I couldn't tie my shoes fast enough, my dad would put cigarettes out on my own forehead. I was thrown on sidewalks. I had like 28 stitches in my chest from being stabbed as a young boy. When I was bathing, my dad would hold my head under the water. And it was very traumatic, very young age. And I remember when I was 6 years old, I chose to forgive my dad. I was saying a prayer. He went to prison for 3 life sentences. And my adopted mom taught me how to pray. And every night I would pray for 7-year-old things or 6-year-old things, right? I would pray for the goldfish, grandma, grandpa, all the things when you're a kid. And then one night I prayed to forgive my father. And I felt it completely uplift off of me. And it really changed a lot of the beliefs that I had accumulated at that young age about not being lovable, being alone for the rest of my life, not even my parents love me, all these things that we create as humans. So my story started then. And there was still a lot of subconscious beliefs that I had that created emotions in this human meat suit, this incredibly intelligent miracle suit that we all have, this human body, right? 3D body. And I held on to a lot. So it was really hard to be in relationship with me romantically, because as soon as things would get easy and there was no drama, I would freak out, because that's what I had as a kid, right? My love was defined on abuse. It was defined on trauma. So I would attract these toxic relationships in my life for many, many years. And then this would continue to go on and on and on. And then I finally got into personal development, and I hired my first coach when I was like 24, just graduating college in Michigan. And I started to learn more about this emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence and all these things. And thankfully, I've attracted some amazing mentors in my life. Had some of the greatest people that have shared with me how to really break free and move past this stuff. So when I was right out of school, I started a credit and debt settlement company in Florida, because I moved from Michigan to Florida after college. And I liked what I was doing, but I wasn't really in love with how I was leaving people. I thought that I could do something more to impact the world and make change. And I was meeting with a mentor every single day. His name's Frank, for 2 years straight for breakfast. He said, if you do anything at all, make sure you do something that changes other people's lives. Now, we've all heard that. But that day I decided to take massive action on it. And I decided to pack up car, everything that I owned, and move away from Florida, where I was very much in some toxic relationships with friends that would go out on the weekends and drink every weekend and whatnot. And I'm like, I got to go where I don't know anybody and reinvent myself and do something that I want to do for the rest of my life, regardless of how much money I'm going to make doing it. And that's when I started Fit Life TV. And this was about 7.5 years ago. So I started filming videos with my HD flip cam. I started posting my own transformation stories because I was 40 pounds overweight. I was tired. I was lethargic every day. Not a lot of life purpose. So 7.5 years ago, I started recording videos with my HD flip cam, and I built a community currently to about 6 million people on Facebook and Instagram. And about 4 years ago, we started Organifi, which is the world's greatest tasting / organic superfoods that are very unique. We use a lot of ancient Ayurvedic technology with Chinese medicinals, a lot of adaptogens that have healed and helped a lot of people on this planet. I get messages every single day from people that it has completely transformed their life. So now I'm living my dream life.
The scene that you painted for us before about what you went through as a child is very traumatic. How can we let go of the trauma, move through the trauma so that we can live our best life that you spoke about before?
There's a lot of things we can do. There's a whole myriad of stuff. And one of the biggest things that's been helpful for me is really knowing who I am, right? Knowing that, for me, one of the biggest beliefs that I have, and that's worked really well for me, is not believing that I was born from this biological human that can make mistakes and abuse their own child. But in a sense, I was a child of God, right? We all are. So that's a powerful belief for me that really helped me move through trauma at a really young age. And then also realizing that in maybe a different timeline or another reality, I was actually the man that was abusing myself. And I just wanted to teach myself a lesson about forgiveness and all the trappings that can come from not letting go and not realizing how sweet and precious our time is here on the planet. So really for me, it's eliminating a lot of those stories coming from a place of power, reframing it to be a more empowering story for me. I learned at a very young age how to lucid dream, which is one of the things that I've used throughout my whole entire life to, number one, see into elements of my subconscious that during the conscious awakened day, I probably wouldn't see. Analyzing and dream interpretation has been huge. And it's just really, really helped me have much more compassion for anybody who has been abused and neglected and abandoned and all these things that come from such a young age of trauma. So just realizing we all go through something. We've all experienced something like that in our lives. So being free from it's the only way to be. Life is way too precious. Yeah, just coming from a place of empowerment is the big thing. And I think if there's three things that anyone can do, number one, it's to rewrite your story. So, what's the story you're telling yourself now? Rewrite it to a more favorable outcome where you're the hero and not the victim. Because there's the victim story and then there's the there's the hero story. So rewrite it and then burn it. Don't tell it anymore unless you're using it for something to help other people. Because the emotions of the story last 15 seconds when it happens. But for some reason, these incredibly intelligently divine brains that we have hold on to it for years. And we recall it over and over and over again. Another method for release is TRE, which is trauma release exercises. And this is a great exercise. You can just Google it, YouTube it, you could put it in your show notes. And this is literally laying on the ground and you force twitching or you force what's called tremors. And these tremors were first discovered in India when there was bombs going off and all these explosions, and these little kids would come to their parents and they would just shake it off, and then they'd be playing 2 hours later, where the parents were holding on to this trauma that was happening in the environment from the bombs and the devastation that was happening in the land. And then one day it hit them that's like, hey, these kids are shaking it off. Like this tremor, there has to be something to tremor release. So now it's like the craziest thing in psychology. I learned it from one of my psychologists that's part of the Fit Life community as well. And it's changed my life. I know immediately when somebody has trauma in their field and they're holding on to things versus somebody who has done a lot of work and has completely released it. And TRE has been insanely helpful for that. So rewriting the story from victim to hero, trauma release exercises is another huge thing. And then number three, because the subconscious mind is really the body. We hold a lot of stuff in our body as far as thoughts, memories, emotions. So if you want to change your life, change your body. And the fastest way to do that is start to eat more nutritious, high vibrational food. That's why we created green juice and a lot of the other superfoods that we create now to really help people perform at a higher frequency. Because if your frequency energetic body shifts enough by your physical, you'll be able to bypass a lot of those destructive thoughts that maybe you once had. Your microbiota starts to shift and rewrite a different story, because a lot of what you see through projection and perception is actually your bacteria in your gut. 90% of the serotonin is derived from your gut, 80% of your immune system, and 50% of your dopamine, which are three really, really incredible neurotransmitters for your body, right? So it just makes sense. So those would be the three things you can do right now.
For someone who might be listening and thinking or in a really dark place, and when you're in that deep, dark place and you've got these very toxic, negative stories going round and round in your head, it can sometimes feel like there is no light. There is no way out. Like it can feel so dark and so heavy. What would you say to someone who may be experiencing that?
Yeah. So the first thing is what do we know to be true in this moment? And if you break down the human meat suit to its molecular form past the atoms, you'll find that the human body is actually composed of light. So in the absence of light, you are light. And if you could just use an affirmation or a mantra, let there be light, you'll immediately start to feel your body shift. But I think second to that, one thing that I always say is when in doubt, focus out. So if you're depressed, it's because you're taking a rest from who you really are. So it's a rest from your true self, and your true self wants to give. You showed up on this planet to give at this time. There's a reason you're here. So start to acknowledge how powerful you truly are. Start to go to the inner trophy room, or as I like to say, the room of wishful thinking. And the wishful thinking room is all the memories, all the thoughts, all the positive experiences that you've had in your life that you can just kind of visualize and meditate on. And as you go into this room, you'll start to remember who you truly are and what you've generated on this planet to give back. And when you're focusing outside of yourself, you're actually generating more light on this planet. So it could be the darkest day that you've ever had, but do something nice for somebody. Open up a door for an elderly person. Buy somebody something. Like, I'm a huge fan of every single line I'm in, a coffee shop, restaurant, the grocery store, just looking back and seeing the person behind me and buying them whatever they have in their cart, whatever coffee shop we're in. And it just changes the whole environment. So if you're consciously doing acts of goodwill and acts of service for strangers that could never repay you, I think that's how you pull yourself out of any funk. There's no way you could feel negative if you're just on a constant rolling give back type of attitude, to be contagiously giving, contagiously focusing out on other people and helping them.
What do you attribute your success to?
Yeah, I would say, I'm going to get a little esoteric and then I'll ground it for all the people that aren't as woo woo. But I don't take any credit for my own success. I think that's a trap because the ego loves success and it can puff its chest up and this is me, this is me. And then when you don't have success, then depression kicks in, sadness kicks in. And when you base your success on, especially as men, like I know a lot of men, and I used to do this quite a lot more than I do today, but it's we base our success on the material gain that we're accumulating, right? So it's an accumulation game or a having game. And for me, that's a lose lose game. So I think my success now is really how much peace am I experiencing in every moment, regardless of any outside external situation. Am I at peace? And if I'm at peace, peace is the highest frequency on the planet. And if you're feeling peaceful, if you're feeling serenity, then you're changing every environment you're coming in, regardless of what you have and the success that you've created. So to sit in a place of peace is my primary goal. If we're looking at, and I said I'd get a little esoteric, which is two ways to look at this. I think the second way is what, and probably what you're really asking, which people can use, what is, what do I attribute to success as far as like leadership quality, as far as some of the traits that I have as a human? I would say number one, depending on where you are, and this is like something that it's just going to take regardless, is you got to have enthusiasm and you got to have passion for what you're doing because that's going to move you when you don't feel like moving. Enthusiasm, to be transformed by spirit. And I think that's the number one thing to my success. Second to that, I'm a hustler slash I work harder than anybody when I have to. So when it comes down to it, 12 to 18-hour days in the very beginning of this journey were not uncommon. And I did that for years. And I was very thrifty. So I knew that the more work I would put in, the more people I would impact. And it was tied to impact. It wasn't tied to numbers on a KPI board or anything. It was how many lives can I change? And I took it serious. So that was one of the big things that helped me be successful. And then third, and I'll just leave it with three, is really caring about the people that are around you, carrying the torch of the mission and the message. So giving relentlessly to them, thinking about them in ways that they probably don't even think about themselves, nor has anybody else given to them the way that we as leaders can give to them. And what I mean by that is just really going the extra mile, 10 times what the average person would do.
So you have experienced such adversity. You've been through so much, from a very traumatic childhood, toxic relationships. You've been through a lot. What would you say are your three biggest life lessons?
Yeah. So number one was the forgiving and letting go of anything that's in the past. Two would be to just be, with no thought of the future, no thought of the past, but just in the present moment. So be here now would be a huge one, because that's when the 3D is the space of the reality that we see. And the reality, oftentimes, as a human, we're in the past and we're in the future. And you can't create from that standpoint. You can't manifest, right? If we're talking about manifesting and materializing your soul's desire, your destiny. So moving into the fourth dimension, everything's present. So just be in the present moment without a thought, in the still space where you can actually hear your higher self, would be the next one. And number three would be to be kind to yourself. So you came in to this body and you're going to leave in this body alone. And if you can be kind to yourself with deep amounts of admiration and love, like you're ahead of the rest of the planet.